you know, 5 or 10 years down the line, there's only going to be one way to make money off, let's say, consumption off streaming, right? And that is really just exactly that. So it's going to be a Spotify, Apple Music, maybe Amazon's platform, but access is the new thing as opposed to ownership. So if we can speed up the process, I think that is a positive trend.
Welcome to the Music Business Facts Podcast, where successful music industry experts share their industry secrets that will help you take your music career to the next level.
G'day everyone, and welcome to Music Business Facts. This is the show where I try and squeeze those facts from my guests in order to try and help you turn your passion for music and the music industry into a business. And I really appreciate you investing your time with me today. My guest today is Budi Voogt, and Budi is a successful digital music marketing expert and an entrepreneur. He's also an artist manager, he runs his own record label, he's a prolific blogger on the music business, and he runs his own music marketing academy where he offers some great music industry online training that contains some really cool content. And on top of all that, Budi's also the author of the SoundCloud Bible, which is a book that really helps artists build a career in today's digital music economy. So the third edition of that book has just come out now, so go and check that out as well. Now, I had this conversation a while ago, and unfortunately, I was really tired. It was one of those days where I pretty much hadn't slept, so you'll have to forgive me if I do sound like a bit of a zombie. Listening back to it, I do think I do sound a bit of a zombie, but anyhow. Budi still gave me a really great interview, and I think he gave you guys some really what I would call cutting-edge marketing strategies that you can consider and possibly implement if you think it's appropriate for your music. So I urge you to really listen to this one intently. I've also created a nice little summary of what Budi had to say, some of his takeaways, so you can go and check those out if you like. Head over to my show notes page over at musicbusinessfacts.com. Search for Budi Voogt, that's BUDIVOOGT, and you can download that little summary, which pretty powerful stuff. Budi's got some really great ideas, and he's a very smart businessman and a really great marketer as well. So without further ado, I'll just go straight into my interview today with Mr. Budi Voogt. Hope you enjoy it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, I'm very excited tonight to have a friend of mine who's a Dutch music marketing entrepreneur. His name is Budi Voogt. That's a very interesting name there. I hope I got that right, Budi. But like I said, he's a music marketing entrepreneur. He's a music consultant. He's an artist manager. This guy's co-founded 2 labels. He's the author of the SoundCloud Bible. And Budi has quickly gained a ton of hands-on experience with numerous tools and services that can help artists build awareness and acquire new fans. Budi, thanks so much for joining me tonight on Music Business Facts.
Thank you for having me, Rodney. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, mate, it's great to talk to you. Hey, listen, mate, I've given you, my listeners, a bit of an introduction with my beginning there. Can you just go in a little bit deeper and fill in any of the gaps and maybe tell people, you know, who you are and a little bit about your music business?
Yeah, absolutely. I will try so. So I am the co-founder and CEO of Heroic, a label group and management agency. We're focused very much on leveraging digital to get as much exposure for artists as possible. And this journey started for me about 5 years ago when I just started at a university. Basically, I started managing my best friends who had just downloaded FL Studio, very legitimately, of course, and started producing their first electronic music. And they put it up on SoundCloud, which then was super early, and track got 10, 20,000 plays in the first week or something. And we really saw opportunity there. So I started working with them, managing them, and really found my way there. Started signing more acts, launched an agency, bought out a partner. And then we about 3 years ago, decided to start Heroic, our own label, because we realized that basically we were facing the same struggle that a lot of artists have today, where they are super talented, and they know who they want to release with or work with, but all the labels and established people in the industry want to see that validation first, right? Mm-hmm. And especially back in the day, that wasn't so numerical on social media as it was, hey, we need to have a major A&R back you for Sony to sign you, and then you're going to put something out. And I think about around that time, you know, like 4 or 5 years ago, was when that pivotal moment happened where that validation was no longer per se the established industry, but rather you could do that yourself, release independently, get the numbers, then use that as leverage. So that's really been the core of what has initiated our mission And so now that translates into, I run Heroic, a management company. We represent San Holo, World, Arc Patrol. We have Heroic as a record label. We run Bitbird as a record label. So Heroic 60,000 on SoundCloud, Bitbird 130,000. Then, and yeah, you explained the rest. Like I write about my thoughts on the industry on my blog, and try and share some of the stuff that we wish that we knew when we started out.
That's fantastic, man. And you've done that in a relatively short amount of time, so it's very, very impressive. Just quickly, Budi, your blog, is that the digitalmusicnews.com?
No, not at all. That is actually a website by Paul Resnikoff. No, my blog is just my name, budivoogt.com. And we're currently doing this big push of transitioning it from being just my blog into really being a platform. Like the team is growing. We have some people who are actually doing in-the-field work on management on the label, producing articles with us. And so that's where people could get a ton of insight into publishing, marketing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, look, it's fantastic. And listeners, I really encourage you to Google Budi. His name is spelled Budivoogt. That's right, Budi?
That is
so
correct.
That's Voogt. And look, guys, there is just an absolute ton of really awesome and really informative stuff that's free on the net. So go and check it out. He's there's some really great authoritative stuff on there, blogs, videos, and stuff like that. There's a lot of things I want to talk to you tonight about, Budi. My first question to you is SoundCloud has changed a little bit. In fact, here's one I read the other day. I don't know if you follow the Music Worldwide blog, but they were talking out that SoundCloud was actually maybe in a little bit of financial struggle. Have you heard of that one? Or was that just a rumor?
Absolutely. No, I think that is correct, and it's a pattern you see with a lot of startups. Basically what they're hinting at, and which SoundCloud's financial statements show, is that they're not turning enough revenue, and thus they need external financing in order to cover their expenses. Mm-hmm. So that means year after year they've been turning a loss. But on the flip side, the same thing is true for Spotify, for example, who have been growing year on year, especially on top-line revenue, but their losses are also increasing. And what they're able to do is they're able to finance that because of the user acquisition and usage and revenue numbers, right, which then is incentive for investors to actually join in and fund more, and then those funds are going to be allocated to realizing more growth. And so I do feel that the streaming market right now, it is all about how big is the share of the market that you're going to be able to capture. And so what you're seeing is that a Spotify, and Apple Music, a SoundCloud, they're all competing for that same pie. And in effect, also they're helping it grow. Mm-hmm. So I think for us as creators, right, that is a very positive trend. But I also think it's kind of testament to the tech bubble that we're in right now, with a lot of people with too much money to spend and a few unicorn successes like a Facebook, Twitter, so forth, and investors wanting to get more of that.
Very interesting. And I also read the other day that Amazon's joined the race as well for a streaming platform.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about that myself. But I do feel that on a consumer perspective, right, in a similar sense that iTunes has a lot of leverage with Apple Music because they have all the credit card details and iTunes users on hand, so they can almost force a migration, right? I feel Amazon could do the same thing, but they haven't really built any relational equity on the music end. Yep.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how this war pans out. It reminds me of, like, I don't know if you're old enough even, Budi, but the old VHS beta tape wars back in the day. Who would be the dominant platform? For me, myself, like you hinted at there, it's just going to be hard to see someone competing with Apple with such deep pockets, and like you said, that music infrastructure that's been supported by iTunes for so long.
Yeah, but I feel like for most of the listeners of this show, right, and for us, it's going to be a positive trend, because what you're seeing is that initially the streaming versus download adoption in America was lagging behind comparably to the Nordics, especially, right? So Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Western Europe. Mm-hmm. And part of that also is because obviously Spotify is a Swedish company, right? So it started spreading from there. And I think it's very closely related to the data plans that people have on mobile. Mm-hmm. And it's relatively cheap here. Like, I pay on a business plan like $50 a month, €50 a month. I get like 12 gigabytes of mobile 4G data. which is terrific. But I think there's some pricing arrangements between the telcos in America, which haven't really been contributing to the adoption of streaming, simply because most of the kids and people around my age I know in America are on a plan that's like 1 or 2 gigabytes, so you can't really go about and stream on Spotify all day because you're going to run out immediately. So I think there's multiple factors that lead to that market adoption not being as quick. But then historically, Spotify has never really spent that much money on advertising, particularly not on the old physical world broadcast mediums, like big billboards, those kind of things. And obviously, Apple has incredibly deep pockets. So I think they will contribute greatly to the relative adoption of streaming in America, right? And also other markets worldwide. And as a result of that, sure, maybe they're gonna compete with Spotify in those same regions, but I also think that they're just going to make the whole market pie grow. And since downloads are going to be a thing of the past anyway, and physical absolutely already is, it means that's a win-win for the artist because, 5 or 10 years down the line, there's only going to be one way to make money off, let's say, consumption off streaming, right? And that is really just exactly that. So it's going to be a Spotify, Apple Music, maybe Amazon's platform. But access is the new thing as opposed to ownership. So if we can speed up the process, I think that is a positive trend. I certainly think that SoundCloud is incredibly relevant, and they have really made a big shift recently. So most of the listeners are not going to be familiar with the term user-generated content. But user-generated content is basically what separates the subscription platforms, let's say like Apple Music or Spotify, comparably to a YouTube or a SoundCloud back in the day, right? So it's user-generated content. In other words, the platforms allow users to simply upload music. And then what the platform said is, hey, we're not a store like Spotify. Instead, we're a medium. So we're not really responsible for the content that's uploaded. Now, YouTube has figured out a great way to still monetize that content by the ads they run on those videos, right? But for SoundCloud, historically, they hadn't done that. And so that also got them into a bunch of licensing issues with the major labels who were obviously, for right reasons, saying, hey, you guys are using all this content to grow your business off and even to attract funding, but the rights holders are not getting paid. And then when you consider that, let's say, Universal Music Group has 35 to 43% of the recorded music industry assets, right? That gives them a lot of leverage to go into that. Now, SoundCloud has just licensed all the major labels and Merlin, so they basically have licenses for the majority of the rights holders in the industry. But, and I think this is just what the rights holders, so Merlin, Sony, Warner, Universal have said is, hey, SoundCloud, that's fine, but we're also going to take a bit of equity. But if we're going to do this and give you guys the licenses, you need to get to a point where you're able to generate revenue. Because otherwise, for example, Son Holo has a track 5 million plays on SoundCloud, right? And that's released on a sub-label of Skrillex label, and Skrillex label is distributed via Warner, so effectively it's a major label release. But I understand that they're thinking, hey, if there's 5 million plays on this record, why aren't we getting paid? And so what they have forced SoundCloud to do in exchange for those licenses is to make the transition from a user-generated ad-supported platform, a la YouTube, to transition to being more of a store, right? Where now, and you've probably heard, SoundCloud Go was introduced, so people now need to pay, especially in the US, UK, Ireland, they got to pay $10 a month, and then they can listen to music ad-free and offline sync on your mobile, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, and sorry for going on a bit of a rant, but so this is like the financial aspect of why I think SoundCloud is really interesting now. And we're certainly seeing this come back in our revenue statements. So they're increasing very significantly. And comparably to Spotify, it's still nothing, right? But I think it will get to a point where you're going to see as much revenue from SoundCloud monetization as you will from running Content ID on YouTube, which is interesting. And then, of course, the marketing and exposure aspect, I think, today is stronger than ever, right? More than a Spotify or Apple Music, SoundCloud is a community platform, so you could really build a fan base. And for us, it's been instrumental in getting our label to pop, getting our management artists to pop, and in our whole release strategy today.
Mate, it's very interesting hearing you speak. You're obviously very well read on the subject, and it's quite inspiring. Just quickly, on your SoundCloud Bible, where can people get access to that, Budi?
They can get it via my site, budivoogt.com or soundcloudbible.com. There is a sample chapter, which is about how to build momentum when releasing music. So I recommend you check that out. And yeah.
Excellent. And let's talk about that. Can you? What I'd really like to try and squeeze out of you in this episode of the show is to get some takeaways for the listeners. So let's go with that one you just said. How can one use SoundCloud to build some momentum? What are some of your strategies and tips and advice?
Right. So there's really a few aspects to this. So number one is laying a correct foundation, right? So you need to make sure your music is amazing, your branding is in check, and that you've built a so-called fan funnel. The fan funnel is basically our description of explaining how an artist can go from acquiring plays and listeners to then engaging those plays and listeners so they become followers, to then building so much of a relationship with them that they become super fans. And once they're at the super fan point, that's where you can really start monetizing them. And part of that is indirect via the stores, but part of that is direct. So, selling merchandise, doing exclusive shows, Patreon-style models, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. And at the top, obviously, for music creators, right, are going to be the platforms that cater most to displaying that type of content. So if you're going to look at a funnel, right, and I want you to actually visualize a funnel, then at the top end, on the acquisition end, probably the best platforms for you to acquire users are going to be SoundCloud, YouTube, maybe Spotify, if you have some relationships to build playlists. But the very audio-visual media-centric platforms you can use to actually get some traction, right? Those are the things you can create and market to blogs so that then people come in. But, and what's important to realize here, by the way, is that the value of a follower is not equal. For example, if you're an artist trying to get people to eventually come to your shows, listen to your music, pay for your stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Then I dare bet that the relative value of a SoundCloud follower is higher to you than it is on Facebook. Because if someone likes your page on Facebook, right, mm-hmm. then if they're going to open up their Facebook feed, they're going to see a ton of content, and it's not just going to be music. So when people open up Facebook, they go there because they want to be distracted, they want to catch up with friends, they want to research something, go to a page, follow it, whatever, right? Yep. So they're not really primed to go and consume music. Whereas if people jump onto a platform like YouTube, it's already more catered to consuming visual content, right? Yep. Or maybe listening to music. But then, especially on the SoundCloud, Spotify level, it's like people go there to consume music. So that value of that follower, with your goal being to actually develop superfan relationships with people who care about your music, that follower is going to be more valuable to you. Then the other thing that's really important to realize is how the newsfeed display works at the different platforms. So for example, on Facebook, I'm sure you've all seen and probably complained about it, as we do, is that if you have 1,000 likes on a Facebook page and you post something, not all your 1,000 fans are going to see it. Probably 10 to 20%. Mm-hmm. And you're familiar with this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so recently Facebook has changed the algorithm, so it's actually improved a little bit. But still, that algorithmic newsfeed display does mean that you don't get the full value out of a post. But the thing is with SoundCloud is that the feed is still linear. And what that means is if you have 1,000 followers on your page and you upload or repost a record, then when your followers actually log into SoundCloud, go to their newsfeed, they're just going to see all the tracks that have been reposted or uploaded by the people they follow in chronological order. Ah. So that's great, right? So,
that's great, yeah.
For multiple reasons, the value of that follower is going to be higher to you. Now, assuming you have your branding in check, and assuming you make amazing music, what I recommend is that artists, before we even get to the marketing part on SoundCloud, is I recommend that they put out music consistently, very consistently even. What I suggest is that you drop the notion of dropping EPs and albums, so like putting out 4 tracks on one day or 10 tracks on one day. I think that's a thing of the past. But conversely, when you're going to go and move towards singles, right? So for example, let's say you want to put out an EP. What you're going to do is you're going to split up that EP so you create more promotional points. And what we advise, especially if you have no traction, is you put out a track roughly every 3 weeks. So you may start and do a track on week 3 and then a track on week 6 and then the remaining 2 tracks of the EP on week 9. And then on the back end, you go to a website like TuneCore, CD Baby, Root Notes, and you distribute that whole EP so that you're still going to get the artistic value and you're going to be able to create within that package realm, right? So EP, album obviously has value because you're able to tell a story. But then on the social media end, you spread it out so you have more promotional points and more breathing room in between of the tracks so they could get more traction independently. Because we're all familiar with putting up multiple tracks at once, putting me in a playlist, and then the first tracks of the playlist only getting the traction, right?
No,
so
go. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's a lot to take in. I mean, I can see why. I mean, for someone like me, I've had a pretty big day today, but I need to sort of see that down because, I've put stuff up on SoundCloud, and what I'm trying to get from you is that, you might take the link and share it on your social media, you might tweet it, put it on your Facebook. But is that what you're talking about? You're just simply doing that, and you're trying, it's like the fishing analogy, you're baiting the hook and you're throwing it out there, and you're just trying to attract people via likes and by other shares and letting it grow organically. Is that what you're talking about there, Budi?
Not exactly. Like the reason I'm going this in depth is because in order to make this work, you need a bottoms-up approach. You need to make sure your foundation is in check. Like you could do whatever marketing strategy, right? Especially on the tactical level. Like how are you going to push the track to a blog? But if your branding sucks or your music sucks, it's not going to help.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to make that one track pop, but you haven't figured out how to create 2 new tracks to put out at least a month after the first single comes out, then you can build all the hype you want, but you're not going to have a follow-up, so you're going to lose it because the life cycle of a record is so low today, so short. So that's why I'm covering this stuff. And to get more tactical, right, is so I don't think we need to discuss the sharing of a link on your Facebook, Twitter, making a video on Instagram, snapping about it. Like, I think that's assumed, and I don't really think that's marketing. What I would do is you start off, you make sure you have a buffer of 3 records, you build a Google Sheet, you plan out, okay, I'm going to put out 1 single every 3 weeks for the coming 3 months, right? That should give you enough buffer to make more content so that when the 3rd track comes out in week 9, you already have one for week 12. Now, 2 weeks before you put out every record, what you're going to do is you're going to take 5 artists that sound similar to you, that are current, and that have a record that has currently popped off, and you're going to research them on Google to find blogs, on Hype Machine to find Hype Machine indexed blogs, and on YouTube to find music promotional channels, and even today on SoundCloud to find music promotional channels that have each in their own turn supported that one track of that one artist that has popped off. So you're going to do this 5 times. And what I want you to do for that first release that you're going to start marketing is in each of these verticals, so normal blogs, Hype Machine blogs, YouTube music promotional channels, SoundCloud promotional channels, I want you to look up at least, let's say, 10 to 20 of these entities who have shown to push similar content. And then what you need to be doing is not look for their promo at or their demo at address, but instead you want to figure out who the founder is of that blog, who the editor is, who the writer is. And we can get super deep on this, right? So I'm not sure if you're actually familiar with Hype Machine.
No, I'm not, to be honest.
Right, so Hype Machine is a website that, especially 2 years ago, was incredibly hyped. And what it has done is basically, it is the biggest blog aggregator on the web.
Wow.
So music blogs, well, I should be more specific. It's the biggest music blog aggregator on the web. So basically what Hype Machine does is their editorial team looks for a bunch of blogs. I think they have like 520 that are indexed. And as soon as one of those blogs actually writes about a piece of content, Hype Machine then indexes it. It refreshes like every 15 minutes or half an hour or something. And it pulls out the embed that's used in the blog post. So maybe that's a Spotify embed, maybe that's a YouTube embed, maybe that's a SoundCloud embed. And then it's going to attribute that specific post to that actual blog on that blog's profile on the Hype Machine. So then you have 520 blogs who each have their own following on Hype Machine, and then whenever they write about something, it pops up. And then what the Hype Machine have done is they've created charts based on genres, on popularity, on whether they're remixes, whether they're not remixes. And those charts are effectively the biggest, almost Reddit-like current news feed of what the best music is that's coming out right now worldwide. And as a result of that, a ton of music journalists, music managers, booking agents, record labels have all started to look at Hype Machine, especially starting 3 years ago, to then find the best music. Because instead of us needing to go and dig for artists ourselves, we simply look to Hype Machine to see, oh, there's actually 10 people who know a lot about music, who write about music, who thought this was dope. And then the next level of promotion that comes into that is that consumers can actually go into the Hype Machine charts to also follow their favorite blogs and look at the charts to see what's going to be popping, right? Mm-hmm. And what you often see is that a record might go off on the Hype Machine and then 2 months later maybe picked up by a label, and then it's going to be re-released and distributed again, and then you might have a radio hit, right? And so that trajectory may be half a year. But conversely, there's also a lot of records where they retain the Hype Machine marketing strategy up until when it comes out, and then it's just part of getting in traction. Because the interesting thing is, because the posts of the blogs that are indexed, it also draws that embed out, means that if people listen to that music on Hype Machine, the plays are going to go back to the original upload. So we just had the Song Holo release that we put out now 8 days ago, and it's over 500,000 on SoundCloud. Part of that is because it got into the charts of Hype Machine. The website gets a bunch of traffic. All these blogs have their followers. All the followers get a notification, and all those plays drip back to the original upload.
Wow, it just sounds fascinating. It's really great to hear you talk. I mean, I've never really thought about the digital marketing of music in this way. Does it work for every genre? Do you think? Could you do it with, say, a grindcore band or a black metal band?
I think so, absolutely. I would say, and this is just truly honest, I do think that electronic music is so closely related to technology that the genre has been mostly adopted on these platforms first. Mm-hmm. But now that all these platforms are growing, and I mean, Hype Machine is big, right? You're going to find any type of music on there.
Right.
And it is true, of course, that I don't think there are that many promotional channels for metal, right? Mm-hmm. But there are increasingly many.
That could be an opportunity, couldn't it?
It is an opportunity. Not could be, 100% it is. And then to come back to the tactical promotion of a specific upload, right? So we were saying one track, roughly every 3 weeks, put it up on SoundCloud, distribute it on the back end, so you're also making money on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify. Then you would take 5 similar artists that are now popping, take their latest record that is done well, and then you use that to basically figure out, hey, here's 10 writers who love my sound, right? Hey, here's 10 promotional channels that love my sound. And then you just reach out to all of them and you market your record and you make sure you send them the SoundCloud link. And then all of that traffic is going to start dripping back to your SoundCloud upload. And as you do that, every time you get success with those pitches, you build relationships. But every time you put out a new record, you're going to look for new people to reach out to. So in doing that, right, if you're going to find 50 people to reach out to for every release, 3 months down the line, you're going to have 150 contacts, right? Maybe 10 of which are going to be in an actual conversation with. But that's still 10 times as much as you had before.
Mm-hmm. No, it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this conversation and take some serious notes, I think, Budi. Thanks so much for sharing all that. It's really, like I said, a little bit mind-blowing for me. But anyway, listen, I also want to talk to you a little bit about that you started a label. You started a label in an era where, the general consensus is it's a terrible time to start a label. Could you give any of my listeners some advice about, starting a record label in an environment where people sort of say no one's buying music anymore?
Sure. Well, I would actually say that is relatively true. People are not buying music anymore. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely more people listening to music than ever.
So does that mean the strategy, sorry to cut you off, but does that mean the strategy when you sign an artist that you're trying to get hold of their publishing so you can exploit the rights there and make the money there? Is that the strategy?
No, not really. Like, in all honesty, publishing, right? And so some readers may not know the difference, right? So there's some listeners, right? So there's obviously a distinction between master recording, so the actual performances, right? The actual sound recording, or the songs that are embodied there. Mm-hmm. Publishing revenues are actually, we do actually have a publishing agency, but the revenues on publishing are majorly lagged behind. So as a record label, we've been making money off masters for quite some time, and now only 2.5 years down the line, with all our administration set up, are we starting to see a trickle of revenue coming through there.
Wow.
But to come back on how the fact that consumption is up but purchasing is down still allows us to run a label. I think it comes back to a few core understandings, right? So the way we operate is we operate fully digitally. We do not do physical products when it comes to music. We do apparel, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then streaming is obviously going to completely dominate the market. And in 3 years' time, we've seen our revenues go from about 35% streaming to 60% and now 65, maybe even 70%. I have to crunch the latest months' numbers, but it's becoming significant. Mm-hmm. And obviously, streaming is cannibalizing downloads. And then 2015, the IFPI reported that 45% of revenue came from digital, whereas 39% came from physical. So it's the first year where digital really overtook physical, right?
Yep.
And downloads are down roughly 10%, whereas streaming is up roughly 45%. And the streaming revenues overall have quadrupled in the past 5 years. So that's absurd. And so what that means for us is the whole model has changed. So instead of investing heavily upfront in a record, what we do is we work on a title basis. We're very singles focused, even though we do put out an EP or a compilation now and then. We put out a lot of content, right? So our record labels currently, we had a period where we did 3 uploads a week, translating into like 5 to 8 releases a month. Mm-hmm. We're cutting that down a little bit now, but it means that through doing that, we're able to stay relevant because people don't forget about us as a label because we're always churning out content. In terms of monetization, it means we keep overhead super low. So we're a completely bootstrap company, haven't taken any investments, no debt funding. It's just we try and maximize our returns on all the digital rights. So it means we have everything up on as many stores as possible. We try and build very strong relationships with these stores, right? So with Spotify, with people with Beatport, so forth. And what we're doing now, to come back to your publishing question, is making sure that all the ancillary income, so neighboring rights collection, so that's your public performance on the master, your mechanical collection on the song, your public performance collection on the song, that's all in check. And we're starting to dive more into synchronizations now. We just synced Saw and Holo in Silicon Valley, the HBO series.
Cool. Was that lucrative, if you don't mind me asking?
Yes, it's incredibly lucrative. And it's also, the odds of that happening are incredibly low. So it's really not something you can count on. You can build those relationships, right? But we'll see like a major sync roll in once or twice a year. And maybe we'll have some one-off things. But what's very interesting now, though, is as we're establishing a roster of artists in future bass and the more forward-thinking electronic genres, we're now establishing a reputation as being the go-to people for this genre. So we've actually have seen a major uptick in requests for syncs in the past few months.
That's very cool, mate. Very cool. And again, you mainly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're mainly dealing in electronica, right? So you're not having to deal with, say, I imagine you're not paying much in terms of advances to go and have to do recordings, because a lot of this music, I'm assuming, is being done in a computer?
Absolutely, that's correct. Yeah. I want to add to this, though, like electronic music has been our point of entry into the market. Mm-hmm. We certainly do not intend just to remain an electronic music label. So we are expanding more to indie. We're expanding more to singer-songwriter stuff.
Yep. And
that's really something we want to do because the people that work at our company, we all like all types of music.
Yeah, cool.
And we want the label to represent that, right? But obviously that's a transition. In terms of advances up front, like our business model is very different than the major labels, for example. Like I'm sure you're familiar with the accounting frequencies of majors. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for listeners who don't know, right, so a major would typically pay you out twice a year, and then obviously, and then often also with a 90-day payment term. So let's say you make royalties in January.
That's assuming you've recouped.
Yeah, so let's say you've recouped and you're going to make royalties in January 2016. Then they are going to account that back to you at the end of the second term, which in this case, if they're counting twice a year, is going to be the fourth quarter. But then they're going to add a 90-day payment term on that, and they're obviously going to stretch that all the way to the limit. So you're going to get paid over March 2017 over your earnings in January 2016, which obviously from a cash flow perspective is impossible, right? Because how are you going to make a living from that? And then here's where the industry is rigged, right? This is what's going to be incentive for then publishers or managers or a bunch of other people to say like, hey, you want to sign with me, take a big advance. And then because you have to take the advance, you sign a shittier deal and you lose all your leverage and then you're stuck, basically. And so what we're trying to do with the label is we've basically spent the past year and a half to create a construction where we're able to do as much monthly accounting as possible for as many revenue streams. So we now have about 3 artists who are making a full-time living from just their Spotify and iTunes income that we're paying out to them every month. Wow. And we're helping them with neighboring rights collection. We're helping them with publishing administration. We're helping them with syncs. And because that's one of the biggest problems in the industry, right, is just a lack of cash flow. Because the labels hold on to that because they just want to get interest on that, obviously. Yeah.
No, look, it's really great hearing you speak. And again, you know, as we talked before earlier, I'm coming from a rock music history where, you know, the bands were getting ripped off by the labels, and they were, like you said, they were sacrificing shitty deals for advances, and because they needed it, they needed to, you know, they couldn't just sort of plug in and get this amazing drum sound. They had to go into an expensive studio and all that kind of stuff. So, all the stuff you're talking about, can you see that working for, you know, let's say there was a 5-piece metal band listening to this interview? Is this the kind of thing that they can do as well? And would someone like you, is it worth sending you a demo, or it's not your kind of thing?
Well, I'm open to any type of music, but to take what we've done and make it applicable to an indie artist, I would say this. Let's say you're a 5-piece metal band, right? I would basically work my ass off to get as much money to then go into the studio to then record a batch of singles. You could package that up as an EP or as an album, whatever, right? I would not go into a deal to justify those costs. And I also think that, I don't know, man, maybe you're going to be recording for a week straight, right? Maybe you need some session musicians, but if you're five piece, you should be good. You know, you guys can work that together, right? That's not an insurmountable amount of money. Then from there, what I would do is make sure that you have all your branding in check. So you got to find someone to take solid press photographs that doesn't make you look cheap, right? And you got to have good designs across all your social media. And then I would go and separate the responsibilities of the team members. So you want to have one person take care of the majority of social media, for example, right? Or maybe actually use the different personalities based with the preferences for specific socials to then create as strong of a content strategy as you could, right? And then because you have a bunch of people, it means that you can be much more effective at gathering all these databases of blogs, YouTube channels, SoundCloud channels, all that stuff, right? Like you could literally sit down with 5 people in one day and bash out what would take an individual 5 days. And from there, I would go the indie route. I just put stuff up. I put it up on socials. I'd make sure to distribute it, use a service like RootNote. They account on a monthly basis. You pay like $10, you get a record up for a year, get it up on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, and then start marketing. And then I think if you do your marketing correctly, right, and maybe at some point, if you guys are actually in a, you know, if you're making money, you have a steady job, whatever. Maybe you also want to throw some money together, hire a publicist, and you're going to pay someone on a retainer basis between $1,000 to $2,000 a month, and just have them outline exactly what they're going to do for your records. And then if your music and branding is good enough, right, and if you're speaking the right tone, then with persistence, you're going to have a track that pops. And once you have a track that pops, that's where the leverage starts kicking in, because then you could either choose A, to continue going the indie route, and B, you're going to get interest from parties, right? You're going to get booking agents, you're going to get managers, record labels approach you to then talk about doing stuff. Because the reality of the industry is today that if you have nothing and you approach an A&R, for example, even if your music is that great, the chances of you being picked up are minimal. Because a good A&R, right, there's a lot of people that make amazing music. But a good A&R today is going to look at your statistics and see like, hey, what have these guys been able to do independently? And if you haven't been able to get to the point where you're popping off and have a fan base, you're not going to get a deal. In the same sense that if I go to a book publisher, right, with the SoundCloud Bible, first thing he's going to ask me is, hey, what's the size of your email list? Because it's not just about putting the book in the stores, it's about, hey, how many people can you maneuver to actually making this thing pop off?
Mate, that's very, very good, very, very interesting, and a lot of really great takeaways in there. So, thanks so much for sharing.
Of course.
There's a couple more things I want to hit you up before we have to wind up, but I know on the web you've got some great videos, and again, listeners, I'd encourage you to go and search Budi and find some of his stuff, but you've got some great stuff on pitching. You're a manager, you're running a label. Can you give anyone listening to this some advice when you're actually trying to, pitch to gatekeepers and people like yourself, people that are key influencers?
Sure. I think it comes down to a few things, right? So core of it is relational equity. So no one wants to feel used. So if possible, you want to treat these people like people, and you also want to be respectful of their time. But there's nothing better than cultivating a relationship, whether that's hitting someone up on Facebook chats and then just seeing what they're up to and maybe complimenting them or figuring out a way to actually add value to them. Something we would do is in the early days, I would actually pitch blog writers. I would pitch them stuff that wasn't our stuff simply because I knew that they were writing about that stuff, so they'd find it useful. Mm-hmm. Or I would compliment them on something very specific that they wrote about, that I thought was interesting, so that people actually see that you're paying attention, and that makes you stand out from the crowd. Yep. And then from there, you can just very politically segue into going into an ask. But I think you can certainly reduce the risk of that ask being declined by doing your prior research. Like we're very specific about how we maintain our blog contacts, for example. So you want to make sure what that particular writes about. You want to make sure what their particular role is at the publication. Like what kind of music do they write about? What kind of genre is it? And then that is going to increase your odds when pitching tremendously. And then when formatting an email, you want to hit them at the personal email address, open up with a first name, just be like, hey, I hope you're well. We are working on this record, which is coming out on this label or independently on this release date. We are looking for either a premiere or an exclusive. We'd love to get your thoughts. Here is a streaming link. Do not add the track as an attachment to your email, right? Yep. Maybe you want to make the download accessible via SoundCloud in that private link. And then on that SoundCloud private link, you want to make sure that you turn the show statistics off, so that the 20th person listening to that SoundCloud link is not going to see the 20th person listening to that SoundCloud link, because that makes them feel dirty, right? and I think what's also very important when you're approaching people and asking for something is that you are very specific about your ask. For example, Rodney, let's say we wouldn't have known each other, right?
Right.
And Jason from my team, he reached out to you and he's like, Rodney, we love your stuff. Budi would love to get on the show and talk about X, Y, Z. Are you interested? Right?
Yep, totally.
And so that's very actionable for you, right? Because you read that, and even if you had no idea who I was, there was 2 lines about what we do, why we like the show, what we could talk about, what the value would be to your audience. Are you in, yes or no? Right?
Yep, absolutely.
But let's say I were to have reached out and said, hey, Rodney, we love the show. I run a record label. Would love to talk. Let me know. Yeah. And that already becomes a lot more ambiguous, right?
Absolutely.
And I feel like if you have a good relationship with someone, you can be more ambiguous in your requests. But I think as much as possible, you want to avoid that. So in any interaction with our staff or with bloggers or third parties or labels, you want to remove the ambiguity by being by phrasing everything that you pitch and everything that you ask in a very yes or no kind of way, so that it's just binary for people and it's easy to answer.
Mate, that's just awesome. There's so much good stuff in there again, Budi, and I absolutely agree with you. But I did absolutely know about you because there's almost not a week goes by where I can't open my Facebook page and there pops up your face and your business, which leads me to my next question about the importance of, like you talked about before, with Facebook and the algorithm only reaching a portion of the fans and the people who like your stuff. Obviously, you're undertaking a pretty extensive Facebook paid campaign. Is that what your advice is to artists when they're up and running with their stuff as well?
Not really, in all honesty. Yeah. The problem, so the reason why paid advertising is great is because it creates a growth engine. The big problem with music, right, if you're an artist, is how am I going to attract more users, right, listeners? Mm-hmm. And then the second problem is how am I going to convert those listeners to money, right? Yep. Or people that really care. Yep. That's like a 2-step process, right? Yep. But let's say for movie theater, it's pretty simple, right? Movie theater buys amazing movies, right? Together with the studios, they advertise the hell out of the music, out of the movies. They do it in bus stops, they do it on television, they run pre-roll ads on YouTube videos. More people come to the movie theater, they look at their ad spend, they look at their revenue, they take off their costs, they're like, hey, we made a profit margin, we're good. We spent more in advertising, right? Mm-hmm. So same thing applies to my business, right? So if we look at my Budi Voogt business with the book and the course, it means, okay, what we need is people to give us their email address. Then we're going to give them a ton of value. That value is going to convert them into becoming super fans, and then they want to buy stuff.
Simple as that. Huh?
Well, it is, but then there's a growth engine because we know, hey, an email is worth this much to us because we know the averages, right, on the spend, on the conversion, etc. Mm-hmm. And so then we can basically look at, okay, if we want to grow, we got to get more email addresses so we can get more people into the funnel. So then it's able to scale. The problem, though, with music is that because the monetization is so indirect and it's much harder for artists to, say, run Facebook ads against people who like metal and then run ads that say, hey, my new album is out, listen now. Like, you're going to have people click, but then the return on that click is going to be much harder to get because your funnel is much less catered towards sales because it is music. It's so subjective. I think that's very different. Yeah. And so the way we have been using Facebook ads, for example, and Facebook is a great medium because there are so many in-depth statistics on a user. You can go from demographic to location to what they like to what language they speak and so forth. Mm-hmm. What we do is, for example, when Sound Hollow does a tour, we run ads against the events within a specific mile radius of that event to his audience. So we take a subsection of his audience within a region and then advertise against them that he's in town playing a show. That's something that we do. And what we're about to roll out is, for example, for the web shop of Bitbird, the record label we run for Sound Hollow, we're going to run retargeting ads where when people check out a t-shirt and then they open up Facebook or Instagram, they're going to be hit with that ad. So that is something you can do. I've never seen a scenario where people ran cold paid traffic acquisition to music and got a positive return on investment.
Mm. Do you, as a part of your course, do you teach the ins and outs of Facebook advertising? Because it's a bit of a quagmire, in my experience.
No, I don't. In all honesty, it is difficult to become very good at, and that's actually been one of my struggles. I have a lot on my hands, and I wanted to understand the fundamentals of this, so I basically spent my whole Christmas, I spent literally 10 hours a day, 3 weeks straight to figure out the Facebook ad thing. And it's paid off, but it's also gotten to a point where we were spending so much money on Facebook ads, I was afraid to spend more money, even though we saw more money coming in, because it's so weird to do that, Mm-hmm. Especially if there's a delay between, hey, you spend $1 now, you get $2 back, whatever. Yeah. So we've just made the move after talking to a bunch of advertising agencies to actually give this to a third party who are now scaling and running this for us, which has been a major relief.
Wow.
But if you're not playing with major budgets, right, let's say you're allocating $10 a day, then certainly I would recommend get those retargeting ads up on your merchandising and also run some ads against your events.
And do you recommend a resource? Can you recommend a resource if you do want to learn about that?
Tough call. Off the top of my head, I know there is John Loomer, Jon, I think Loomer, yep, who has a great blog about Facebook ads. There is digitalmarketer.com, which is founded by Ryan Dice, who has some great articles about Facebook advertising and retargeting. Who else do we have?
Amy Porterfield is another one.
Yes, Amy Porterfield, 100%. Her podcast is very good.
Yes, it is. Well, great.
And that is it. But I do, if you're going to go over $10 a day, please know what you're doing, because that money is also going to be gone in a second.
Yeah, right. Mate, I swear, my listeners, you're all going to have to listen to this interview at least 2 or 3 times, I think, to get all this value, unless you're madly taking notes, which is hard to do when people are listening to a podcast at the gym or taking the dog for a walk or whatever you're doing. But listen, Budi, again, mate, I really want to thank you for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that perhaps I should have, or that you would like to express to my audience? And again, if you'd like to give your stuff a bit of a plug so people can go and find out more about you. Well,
I think we covered a lot of ground.
Absolutely.
Thank you again for having me on the show. I'm also super interested to learn more about the metal and the rock world, so we come from these different perspectives, but that highly interests me. People can find my stuff at my blog. We have a free video series, but you can sign up for that. We're going to talk about that later, I think, because you're going to announce the webinar we'll be doing.
Yeah, so one of the things, listeners, that I spoke to Budi when I sort of got my head around how smart this guy was, is that I would like to invite you guys in the future. We'll be announcing very soon a music marketing masterclass with Mr. Budi Voogt. Did I pronounce that right?
Close enough. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. So we're just going to talk a bunch more about this stuff with some slides, so it's easier to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned for that, guys. I'll be in touch. It'll be occurring not long after this gets published. And again, Budi, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and thanks so much for just so much information as well. It's you're obviously a very smart guy. You put a lot of time and energy into this, and it's great to see that it's working for you. So I really look forward to learning more from you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, man, and thanks everyone for listening.
And just before you go, I'm going to try some of my Dutch on you, okay? How's this? Op de toekomst.
Op de toekomst, I like it.
You like that?
To the future.
To the future. I read that on a beer when I was touring Holland, and I remembered it. Okay. Thanks so much, Budi. I'll talk to you soon. And remember, guys, I'll be in touch with this music marketing class that I will be getting back to you for some live training with Budi. Thanks very much. Well, there you go, people. I really hope you enjoyed the information shared by Budi. As always, I love your feedback, and you can always hit me up at rodney@musicbusinessfacts.com. You can search for Music Business Facts on Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter on Music BIZ Facts. Like I said, during the interview, I felt that I was very tired, but I think you can still hear Budi's wisdom shining throughout the interview. And there really were some great and interesting strategies offered. Some which I thought stood out was, just the notion of putting out music consistently, being like a content marketer and using your music just like a content marketer would with any type of digital product. The notion of putting out an EP or an album and the move towards singles. Now, that's quite contentious. I think that's probably perhaps it's a little bit genre specific, but definitely something to consider and something that I'm looking at with my planning with some of my clients at the moment before you do the record, And we're seeing that today with pretty much that's what Metallica's doing with their new record, putting out the music video, then doing it for the next clip, the next song. And the record is obviously coming. So, yeah, it's a very interesting little strategy there. Anyhow, lots of really cool and interesting stuff. I hope you will agree. Anyhow, that's it for me today. And until next time, I hope you're setting yourself some serious goals and you're doing something every day to work towards those goals. And again, I really hope that these interviews that I'm providing you are in some way, shape or form helping you reach those goals in the music business and heading towards becoming music as a hobby to music as a business. Until next week's episode, I'll leave you with this great quote, and this one's from Thomas Edison. And this one says, "Opportunity is missed by most people as it is dressed in overalls and looks like hard work." This is Rodney Holder, guys, signing off from musicbusinessfacts.com, and I'll talk to you very soon. See you.
You've been listening to the Music Business Facts podcast. For more essential music business tips and information, visit musicbusinessfacts.com.